Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins.
And I'm Paul Hankins.
And welcome to On the Air with Power Squared. This week, we're going to look at a couple of things. First is LA Comic-Con, and the other is, because we're sitting in front of a Christmas tree, Christmas movies.
That's right.
That are on Trophy Unlocked.
Yes.
Which happens to be celebrating an anniversary this the coming weekend, the 18th. It's how many years old?
It'll be Trophy Unlocked will turn 11 years old.
All right, and this is a blog that you started.
Yeah.
And you want to tell people why you started it?
I don't think there much thought really went into it. Let's see, there was a point where I had an account on another website and I reviewed stuff on there, and even though I didn't really get much traction, I liked doing it, so I decided to make a dedicated blog for that. I got the idea, when we saw Tron Legacy for the first time.
In a theater?
Yeah.
And it was like the 17th or the 18th of December, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I remember that being like a really good weekend.
Yeah.
And since then, you've got Paul, you write on it, Trevor writes on it, and I write on it.
Yeah.
So, and you have over almost 1,300?
Yeah. And
almost 600, or over 600,000 people have visited the site.
Yeah.
So it's a good deal.
Yeah.
it's always fun. At least a couple hundred people usually look at it a day.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. So before we get into Christmas movies, let's talk a little bit about LA Comic-Con.
Yes.
Which we have never attended before.
No.
And we decided, you know what, in the middle of the pandemic, let's go to a con.
I think we considered scouting LA Comic-Con anyway, because we were trying to figure out if there are any other conventions we could try to, like, somewhat local conventions that we could table at.
Yeah.
And that seemed like it would be easier to accomplish at LA Comic-Con than, like, San Diego Comic-Con, because San Diego, you've got too much stuff going on, and there's, like, way more logistics involved, plus it's, like, a couple hours away.
Yeah. And we'd never been, for whatever reason. I think we were after WonderCon and Comic-Con, as far as going to cons, we kind of had our fill, but we hadn't been to either one in a long time. Yeah. And we also thought, we should check out LA Comic-Con. And they had, I want to say we bought these tickets in 2020 when we thought by now the pandemic will be over.
Yeah, and I think at that point when we bought the tickets, they were going to, because everyone was still way more concerned about COVID. Like
some of us are still concerned, but yes, I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When people generally didn't feel like, we can kind of open up.
Right.
Pre-Omicron. Anyway, when it was just, I think, the regular variant, they were originally going to do it where you'd have a certain amount of time blocked that you could be in there.
Either go in the morning or go in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And we bought tickets where we were going to go in the morning. And I think this moved at least once since we bought the tickets. Yeah. I honestly don't remember exactly the details. And then they opened it to all day. And we honestly didn't spend a lot of time there. We spent a couple hours there, but not all day. Yeah. So it's
they're partly because they're worried about Omicron.
Yeah, and there's no reason to overexpose yourself to something that you don't know what's going on, and maybe they'll find out in a few weeks or months or whatever that it's no big deal, but you never know. And I don't want to be like the guinea pig that finds out. Yeah. So it's sort of like WonderCon. Yeah. But I'll say smaller. Would you say?
See.
At least this version of it. Maybe when it's not a COVID year, it's a bigger,
Yeah. From what I remember when they had WonderCon at the LA Convention Center, it was sort of the same size.
Okay.
In terms of space that it took up.
Well, I remember us being able to. There were some rooms that we couldn't get to because the autograph thing, which was I think downstairs somewhere, but the line was really long, and we didn't want to spend, at LA Comic-Con. Yeah. So we don't want to spend the hour or so in line it would take because, again, exposure and trying to keep moving and all that. Yeah. So, what were your general impressions?
LA Comic Con?
Yeah.
It was probably because I haven't been to a big convention in a while. It felt a little chaotic in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we weren't prepared to do like autographs and panels and stuff, but there was already like lines and crowds for that. Like, we wanted to scout the autograph area, but there was a long line to get in, probably because there were, I'm gonna guess, it's either a small area or they were pulsing people in because of COVID.
Yeah.
The main floor, it wasn't too hard to navigate, though there were definitely certain choke points around certain booths. I liked that there was a big area in the middle where you could either approach the main stage, which is where certain, I guess, panels of sort were, or you could, like, that could be sort of you could take a quick breather.
Right. I mean, one thing I liked over, I'll say, San Diego Comic-Con was the aisles were really wide.
Yeah.
Which also means there weren't as many exhibitors there.
Yeah.
But it was nice that you could actually, there was enough room to pass people by, usually.
Yeah.
There were some things that I wouldn't consider Comic-Con-ish in a way. I mean, there was a big, fairly large tattoo parlor set up.
Yeah.
I don't think of that as, I mean, I know people like tattoos. I don't personally, but it just seemed odd that there would be that set up there. There was a thing about a different way to get food. We walked by a booth like that, and then there was something to do with, I still have no idea what they were doing. We walked by and there was this girl on a little tiny stage dancing, and come dance with us, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, okay, that's not, I don't think of that as Comic-Con stuff. It's more of it seemed a little bit more like a flea market kind of environment in a way.
Yeah.
There weren't really any big exhibitors there.
No.
None of the major labels were there. There were a few people actually selling comic books.
Yeah.
But not a lot. There was a lot of artists, and the downside of having that main stage in the middle of the floor was that if you're trying to talk to somebody who's boothed near that stage, you couldn't really hear them very well.
Yeah. We were trying to talk to someone at one of the Lee Walds at the X-Men the Animated Series booth, and it was hard for them to
hear what we were saying. We were like right up next to each other.
Yeah.
So very loud. I mean, it's kind of very democratic, I'll say, that there's this big stage going on and everybody could see it who's going there. There's not that Hall H sense. But, if you're trying to talk to somebody within 30 yards of it, it's hard to talk.
That main stage aspect kind of reminded me of D-Con, Designer Con, because the way they do panels is like there's only like one area for panels, and it's on the same floor as everyone else, and it's in the corner. So it was like and that's usually not too crowded. So it's like, if you want to see this panel, then just come right up.
Okay. Yeah, so it was kind of nice they had that there, but again, there was kind of a downside to it.
Yeah.
And we kind of walked around. We saw somebody we knew.
Yeah.
Who was a guest of LA Comic Con. Yeah. And I was very happy that he recognized us.
Yes.
That was kind of cool. But yeah, we didn't. So, would you want to go back to LA Comic Con?
Maybe. I think if we did go back, we'd need to be a little more prepared.
Mm-hmm. And would you want to table at LA Comic
Con? It wouldn't be the worst place to table.
Right. Okay.
Because it's still a fairly big convention, and it's not too far away.
Right. Yeah, it would be easier to do, and I don't know what the pricing would be.
No, we would need to investigate that.
Yeah, we don't have too many lost leaders. Okay, so if you've been to LA Comic Con or whatever, let us know.
Yes, either in the chat or in the comments.
Right. So again, because we're sitting in front of a Christmas tree and because of Trophy Unlocked's anniversary, we thought we'd talk about Christmas movies.
Yes.
And I guess we have about 40 something that we reviewed on the blog.
Yeah.
We have a Christmas review hub.
Yes.
In case you're watching or listening and want to figure out what we're talking about. How would they find Trophy Unlocked?
trophyunlocked.blogspot.com.
And you can look up Christmas, and we have a bunch of movies there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what makes up a Christmas movie.
Yes. Well, the loosest definition, which I suppose definition we go with, is if it takes place during Christmas, then it is a Christmas movie.
Yeah, in some cases they're called drive-by Christmas movies,
which we've also distinguished.
Yeah, Red is kind of a drive-by.
Yeah, because Christmas is in the background, but it's not a huge part of it.
Well, yeah, with Red, I think Christmas is like barely there. You know, it starts off, and I think that's the same thing with. There's a science fiction movie that we reviewed.
Yeah,
I'm trying to find Things to Come. I think kind of starts around Christmas. It doesn't have anything else to do with Christmas. The rest of the movie.
No.
So, and there's always that question: is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Yes.
And we have proof that it's a Christmas movie because there's a book that tells the Die Hard story as if it was the night before Christmas. So,
yes,
I encourage you to look for that if you can find it.
Yes,
it's fun. So, we have movies that happen on, and then there's some that are kind of Christmas. Yeah, a lot of the movies we have on the blog, a lot of Christmas movies just take place like It's a Wonderful Life is not necessarily a ho ho ho. You know, a guy's going to commit suicide. But that takes place on Christmas Eve. So,
yes.
And people watch it as a Christmas movie now. So, do you have a favorite Christmas movie that we've reviewed?
Favorite one that we've reviewed.
Or not reviewed. Maybe we haven't reviewed your favorite Christmas movie.
That's actually a good question. Looking at this list that we've got here, and I guess random reminder that Once Upon a Deadpool technically counts as a Christmas movie because of the framing device.
Right. That's Christmas.
Yes. There are a lot of good choices.
We don't have any really, I'll say, religious films on here.
No.
And you know, Christmas is a religious holiday.
Yeah.
But sometimes that those kind of movies they're not shown as Christmas movies as much.
Right.
So I just want to. One thing that we did do is we've reviewed about 7 different versions of A Christmas Carol.
Yes.
The Charles Dickens story that has never not been in print.
Yeah.
Since it was published originally.
Which is very impressive.
Right. So we've watched a silent version, a 30s version, a 50s version, an 84 version. We also watched a movie called Scrooge from 1935, which is basically the story that is named the main character. And we watched the movie The Man Who Invented Christmas, which I think was pretty good, well done. The Man Who Invented Christmas is really well done.
Yeah.
And we've also are going to have eventually on the blog the review of
Mickey's Christmas Carol.
Right. So, one thing that, and I actually did, because we reviewed so many of these movies, I read the book, which is a novella. It's not really hard to read.
Yeah. And
it's not, in that kind of, sometimes older books are kind of written, they seem thick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. This isn't that kind of a book. And the movies basically are kind of, they're doing a fairly good job of retelling it, honestly.
Yeah.
I think there was something I read somewhere that in the book it happens over 3 different days as opposed to one night, but I think it does happen in one night, having read the book. So I think it does they actually do a fairly good job, and some of them, as we like the 1910 Thomas Edison version speed runs through the whole story.
Yeah.
And they'll concentrate on different parts of the story and not necessarily give all the detail that's in the book.
Right.
And so that's kind of, but they do seem to be retelling themselves. They're remaking the movie, not remaking the story.
Yeah, I think that if something gets adapted enough times, it seems to eventually happen where people borrow from like the most famous version of it as opposed to the source material. Like with most versions of, or most takes on Wizard of Oz, everyone borrows at least somewhat from the famous MGM version as opposed to digging more into the original book.
Right. Because that's the story you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And they're familiar with. So we've also reviewed something recently called 8-Bit Christmas.
Yeah.
Which was about a kid looking for a video game back in the 80s.
Yeah, he was looking for NES.
All right. Yeah, actually the player, right?
Yeah.
Not just the game. So what did you think of that?
I thought for the most part it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had zero expectations going in and we just kind of watched it on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was, yeah, we noticed it was a Christmas story mixed with something else.
Yeah.
Escaping me right now.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But it is like very similar to a Christmas story in some ways. Yeah.
It's kind of a modern version of a Christmas story, and it felt appropriate.
Right.
I can, even though I didn't go through like the same rush to get a video game console, except for maybe desperately trying to get a PS5.
Right.
It was relatable in that sense.
Okay.
And Neil Patrick Harris was actually pretty good.
Yeah. And there's different.
Just the other movie was Princess Bride.
Okay. Right.
Framing device.
Right. Oh yes, very much like that. Yes.
Including like the kid doesn't want to hear the story, but then they get really invested.
Right. Yes, and thanks Trevor for the note. So is there again, do you have a favorite of the movies we reviewed? Or it doesn't have to be one either. I have several that I really like.
Yeah. Of the ones I'm seeing in front of me, I really liked the original Die Hard, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, the original animated version.
Right.
Miracle on 34th Street was
That
really
was
good.
that was one of those surprisingly good. I mean, you heard about it your whole life, and I've seen they've done remakes of it, and we saw the original, and it was pretty good. I really liked it. Very well done.
I also liked Shop Around the Corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that
Which
is
some of you might know as You Got Mail.
right, right. Or in the good old summertime if you're into musicals. Yeah, that's really good. That's really well done. I also like It Happened on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
That's a really nice little story. Takes place within that week, basically.
Yeah. And of course, you also have It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, which makes me cry every time I watch it. And I don't want to watch it on NBC, no offense, but they take like 4 hours to tell the story.
Yeah.
It's not that long of a movie. I don't want to spend that much time with it. But when we do watch it, I get choked up every time I watch it. It's still effective.
Right.
Even though at the time it wasn't a big success when it was released. Remember the Night is good. It's got the people from Double Indemnity.
Yeah.
Barbara Stanwyck and Fred McMurray. And it's about a sort of a local assistant DA in New York going back to Indiana, and there's a shoplifter they put into jail, and he feels bad for her on Christmas Eve, so he bails her out and takes her with him.
Yeah.
And it's a nice little homey Christmas story, and you kind of get all that kind of good feelings you're supposed to get from a movie like that. But then they would turn around and make Double Indemnity, where they're murdering somebody. That's kind of the beauty of Hollywood films. The studios, you'd see stuff and go, and then the same people would be doing something totally different in the next movie or whatever.
Yeah.
There are some movies like the nice thing about the Christmas film, as we're defining it, is it doesn't have to. It can be, film noirs.
Yeah.
And there's a couple. One of the most famous one is Lady in the Lake, which is all shot from third person perspective. I mean, the art it's from a first person POV. The main character, you're seeing everything through his eyes the whole movie.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a cute but gets a little old, storytelling technique.
Yeah.
I think, I like the story and all that, and it could be, as I say, there's sometimes where like she kisses him and stuff. I don't really want to see that from that point of view, but it's a pretty good movie too. So yeah, if I had to, and then Holiday Affair was something it's Robert Mitchum and Jan Lee.
Yeah.
And that was actually it was made to sort of soften Mitchum's persona, because he'd been recently arrested for marijuana possession back when this film was made, which was a bigger deal than we think of it now, for a star to be arrested for pot. And they were trying to sort of soften his persona, and so they put him into this sort of Christmas film, and I think he did a pretty good job with it.
Right.
And another movie I like is The Bishop's Wife, which has been remade as The Preacher's Wife. But The Bishop's Wife is David Niven and Cary Grant, and blanking on the woman's name, which is bad because she's in a bunch of movies. I feel really bad. But anyway, we're doing this off the cuff, so there's no notes. And they actually, it's an angel comes to visit a bishop who is in sort of that moment of, personal crisis and needs help. And they actually switched the roles. Cary Grant was supposed to be the bishop.
Yeah.
David Niven the angel, and they started shooting that way, and the producer went, no, this isn't working, so he flipped him back, so changed him up. So that's also a good movie, I think, too. Some movies, there's a lot of Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol is another take on the Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
With Mr. Magoo with songs, and so there's some TV stuff on our hub.
Yeah.
As well. And then there's movies like The Thin Man that sort of takes place at the holidays, so it's not really a holiday film, but it does take place during that time, so we threw it in there. Holiday isn't really a Christmas film, but it takes place around the holiday, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then we recently posted Batman Returns.
Yes.
Because Christmas plays a big part in that film.
Yes.
As sort of background stuff.
Yeah, it takes place during Christmas.
Right.
So it is a Christmas movie.
We're also going to be in the next, just to continue for the next month, we're going to have 3 more movies that we'll be having up there.
Yeah.
Including Little Women from 1933, which is the Katharine Hepburn version.
Yes.
Christopher Columbus. And Holly and the Ivy, which is a British film. It takes place around the holidays. And finally, We're No Angels, which takes place on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
And so and Christmas is sort of, the dinner part of Christmas is in there.
Yeah.
It's got Humphrey Bogart, and that's why I wanted to see it.
As far as Christmas movies go, I will address, at the beginning of this, we had someone in the chat bring up Home Alone. I believe I saw Home Alone when I was a kid, so I don't remember too much of what happens in it. I should probably rewatch that at some point.
I have never seen Home Alone.
All right.
And not that I'm necessarily proud of that fact. It just sort of...
You just haven't.
No, and I just sort of... I guess the whole premise seemed kind of weak to me, that you would leave your child and go off to Europe. Just how would that happen? And I know that's the whole premise of the film. And these, it just sort of seems kind of like not a great premise for me. And I know they've made 2 or 3 of them since, so he keeps being left at home, apparently. Whoops, we forgot him again.
But again, I feel like at some point I should probably rewatch that.
Yeah, it couldn't hurt. And maybe we'll review it for the blog.
Maybe we will.
2 or 3 years. I mean, we'll have a little window. It's only December on Saturdays that we put up reviews of Christmas films.
Yeah.
Though on the 18th, it's going to be what?
Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
All right. And that's going to be the 11th anniversary?
Yes.
And how did you decide to pick that?
Well, I was... I got to the point where I was trying to figure out, okay, I need to do something. And my mind immediately went to, like, should play some kind of game for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided I should play something that was iconic, and I happened to have a PS2 copy of San Andreas, so I've been plugging away at that for a couple weeks. And at the time of this recording, I am really close to being done. It's just like the last 5 missions.
So every anniversary you've done a review.
Yeah.
And is this the first time you've done a game as the anniversary review?
No, it is not.
Okay.
In fact, last year I did The Last of Us Part 2 as the 10th anniversary because that was a really big deal at the time. Spoilers, I didn't like it as much as everyone else did.
What? Okay.
For what I want to believe are legitimate reasons.
Okay. All right. So coming up again on this Saturday is going to be Holly and the Ivy, I believe. And then the next Saturday is going to be your review of
GTA San Andreas.
Right. And then we get back to Christmas for the next 2.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think that about covers it this time.
So we want people to check out the blog.
Yes, again, that's trophyunlock.blogspot.com.
Okay.
And if you are watching this on YouTube and you like this conversation and want to hear more, leave a like if you like it. Consider subscribing and ringing that bell.
Okay. And next week we're having our December team meeting, so all the creators behind Power Squared will be there.
Yes.
And so until next time, I'm David Hankins.
And I'm Paul Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.